Awesome. Hello, everyone, and welcome. First and foremost, I want to give a big thank you to our sponsor for today's event, AWS. Their generous sponsorship has made this conversation possible. I'd also like to go ahead and thank our participants for taking the time to join us for this really interesting conversation. Joining us today is Liz Hollerman, Dean for the Institute for Business and Information Technology at Bellevue College. Ava Meredith, the Information Management and Data Science and Program Chair at Skagit Valley College. And we've got Nathan Bossler, President and CEO at Castus TV, Clarence Hoskin, Advanced Consulting Partner at Triumph Tech, Mandira Vermani, Director of Program Development at Computing for All, and Laura Resio, a full life cycle recruiter at the AWS Early Career Talent Team. And of course, a huge thank you to our last minute MC, Brianna Rockenstein, the Director at the Centers of IT Excellence, for stepping up at the last minute to facilitate this important conversation. If it's your first time joining an event hosted by WTIA, welcome. WTIA is the largest tech industry association in the United States. So if you work in tech, make sure your company becomes a member. Membership is free for tech companies. Lastly, I want to note that we will be recording this conversation and we'll make it available on our website in the coming days. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll drop my contact information in the chat. Thank you again for joining us. The recording has already started, and I will go ahead and pass things over to Kimberly Carlisle from AWS for some opening remarks.
Well, thank you, Joshua. And we are just so excited to be here. We'd like to thank WTIA for their collaboration. We really enjoy our partnership with them and working through their efforts within the community and within the state of Washington. So thank you for taking the time to host and to review some of the efforts that have been going on as of late. I would just like to briefly give some welcome remarks. AWS has been working with some higher ed institutions, as well as the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, the K-12 system there in Washington, to increase the number of individuals trained and certified in cloud computing. And so this is a really important conversation for us to not only participate in, but also to learn from other employers as to their difficulties or some of the things that they have seen when it comes to hiring and finding qualified talent for these cloud jobs that they are looking to fill. Special thanks to our education institutions that are here as well, and for all the hard work that they are doing in training and providing opportunities for students. With that, I will turn it back over to WTIA to begin the conversation, but thank you, and looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you again so much, Kimberly, for being here and making this event possible today. From here, I'll go ahead and hand the stage over to our MC, Brianna Rockenstein, to get the conversation going.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. It's nice to see you all here today. I'm really excited to be having this conversation as we think about the direction that the technology industry is going, the impact across all industries, the opportunities for our state, and what the future workforce is going to look like. To me, and I think to many others, cloud computing can tend to feel like one of those buzzwords that's everywhere. We all of a sudden are hearing it in every conversation, but I think it's really important to really examine what that means for individuals in our state and the companies that do business here. Strategic workforce development is a really critical part of a business's success, and the education system is a really important part of that conversation as well. So today we're going to talk through sort of what cloud-related roles exist, how the demand is growing, how education and industry can work together better to create more meaningful, more sustainable partnerships, and how companies can really build out their cloud workforce in a way that impacts their long-term success. So let's go ahead and start things off with a question for Laura, and then others can chime in as well. But Laura, can you give us kind of a broad overview of what you're seeing around the demand for cloud talent and how that's changing the way that companies are doing business?
Absolutely. So I think everyone that's on this call can attest to the need for that talent. Everyone's looking for it, especially some of the common roles, like a software developer, for example. I think I was doing some research a few months back, and it was showing that there weren't even enough computer science, info technology students coming out of those type of degree fields compared to what is needed in the workforce. So it just shows how critically important that is, and having those type of skills. And what I have seen with AWS and some other companies as well is we're opening up what criteria we're looking for when it comes to those skills. A lot of or what it used to be a lot of times was that degree, 2-year, 4-year degree. But what a lot of companies are doing, including AWS now, are opening positions that don't even have that degree requirement. Although that is generally preferred, or if you have that, it's definitely not a bad thing. But we understand that there's boot camps, there's different avenues and different routes for students or those in the workforce to get those skill sets and develop those cloud skills without necessarily going through school. And so I think being flexible and understanding the workforce and what is out there and kind of altering your business needs to that is definitely super critical. So you'll see like SDEs, front-end engineers, system development engineers, all of those kind of very technical hands-on coding type roles are definitely still in need and going to be in need. When it comes to those roles, it really depends on kind of the level of role you're applying for. My team that I'm on specifically within AWS, we look for early career talent. So those with very limited, if any hands-on experience outside of internships. So we will rely heavily on internships when we're looking for that, or even just teaching themselves. That is very common these days. A lot of students or a lot of the workforce are taking different certifications on their own, which we see as common, both AWS and different certifications as well. So that's always nice to see the willingness and the desire to kind of learn and be curious and want to gain those skills, even if you may not have the opportunity to do internships. So that's a lot of kind of what we're seeing and how we're kind of adjusting to what is in the workforce right now, but would love to kind of hear what some of the other panelists have to say as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I think this time in the job market is really interesting. And those of us in the education system, I think, are excited about what that means and how we can help more students access these opportunities if we can be a little bit flexible, and the companies we're working with can kind of change some of their processes to a really exciting future. Nathan, let's head over to you and hear your thoughts on the same question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. I enjoyed listening to Laura's answer as well. It is a very exciting time, and finding talent has been kind of, it's a challenge, but also once you find that the right fits, it's so important to retain from a company owner standpoint, the best efforts possible to keep the talent working together and that good team atmosphere. We did internships early on, and I've hired a few folks that have come from the boot camps. But really, I think from our organization standpoint, what we're looking for the most is engineers that have that skill set, that have that passion for doing the engineering, but also really can gravitate towards like the mission of the company. So ours specifically is in television, broadcasting, streaming, and video on demand. So it's pretty exciting technologies. So it's also very technical. So you get a lot of people that really want to just work for the organization, doing these types of jobs and projects working for us. So it becomes very difficult to separate like who's actually qualified to be on the project and be on the team working versus the 30 applicants that apply for the position. And sometimes it's like you're wondering, did you read the requirements in the stack? Because we're not here to teach you all the stack and do all of your training. You got to know a little bit about what you're getting into before you just jump on board. But we have found a mix, and it really hard. It's hard to detect without seeing an engineer's work, without seeing the engineer working with their team, how they're going to provide value and add value to not only just the team, but also the company and the products and the services, because that directly reflects what our customers are going to see at the end result. So it's critical that we hire the right people. But in technology, it's tough because you have to have that runway. You have to have the 2-3 months to see if it's a shining star that we've hired, or if it's someone that's just, not up for the challenge. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe it's just not the right fit. But that's definitely one of the challenges we've faced, is just making sure that it's actually going to work and that they're the right fit for the position, the right fit for the job, and just carving out that, and backtrack a little bit, just making sure we had the right stack in place. So finding the engineers that know the stack that we're working on. And so from there, we've managed to get a very talented team, but when it comes down to hiring and scaling, that is definitely it's become one of the most difficult parts of the job, is to find the right talent and the right fit for the team and for the company overall.
Lance, I think you work with early career folks quite a bit. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what types of roles have tended to be a good fit for early career individuals, and what skills really stand out as being really critical in this sector.
Yeah, I mean, based on what I've seen in the industry and working with interns at AWS, I personally work with the startup team in AWS and a couple of interns that just graduated. Really what it boils down to is personality and passion. Like, is this what you love to do? And if you love what you do, you're going to be diving much more deeper into these technical resources, trying to find out everything you can to be the best of who you can be in the industry that you want to be in. When it comes to specific roles, I mean, I come from a little different background. I'll tell you, I do not come from higher education, but I can tell you that I know how to pivot. So the benefit to a lot of those who are shooting for, shoot for the stars, aim for the moon, that's what I always recommend. And there's a lot of entry points that you can go with AWS, as Laura mentioned, where you have the internship programs, or there's others like joining a partner, understanding how AWS partnerships work as a consulting partner. We actually are a little bit more involved than the AWS reps themselves. So I'm on the sales side, but I would say that looking for the right fit on what you want to do and what you love to do, and be part of the internships, look at different entry points, is kind of my suggestion for those who are looking to get into the tech world. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about how companies can really start to build out this workforce as they transition to a more cloud-focused operating environment. I think what we're hearing is there feels like there's not enough talent to fill all of the open roles that exist. So what are some of the biggest challenges that companies are facing in this space? And what are some solutions you've seen to really start filling some of these open roles? Nathan, how about back to you on that one?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think of a good answer for this. I kind of was thinking in the back of my mind too, the analogy is, I come from a video production background. And we always used to joke, just because you have the sweetest camera in Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro doesn't make you the world's best shooter and editor. And to go off of Clance's point is, it does take passion. And that's my cousin asked me last week, because he knows, everyone knows you can make good money in software engineering. He said, I think I want to be a software engineer. What advice do you have for me? I said, well, do you want to sit in front of the computer? Does that excite you? And when you get home, is the first thing you want to do pull out your laptop and log into your account and start, testing code and building code? He goes, no, absolutely not. I said, well, that's definitely not going to be a good fit for you. So you really do have to understand that working with technology is a day in, day out thing. And technology is never perfect. And as a perfectionist myself, and I strive for perfection, that's one of the things I had to understand. It's always one of those things you got to keep going back, massaging. You got to look out far into the future, what's coming up next. But some advice I have is really focusing on what part of the software engineering you want to do, whether that's the back end, the hardcore code stuff, or whether you want to work in the front end, making the pretty stuff, or you want to do a little bit of both. 3 years ago, my company was more positioned in on-prem software. So that's more of like the low-level C, C++ code, and finding those engineers is extremely tough as well. Jumping forward now into the cloud engineering, it's great that Amazon has all these efforts out there, educating students and colleges have really, a lot of them like Bellevue College and WSU have really grasped, this is a huge future. Cloud computing is the future for software engineering. It positions companies for success because now we can create recurring revenues, but we also have that connectivity where we're always able to roll out updates, roll out patches and fixes, and it's all real time. So it gives us a tremendous advantage. The audience before too, our customer base, our audience was, and I think we all in this room can agree, was kind of skeptical of like, ooh, the cloud, I'd rather not pay my Adobe monthly. I just want to buy the discs. But now jumping forward to today, I'm so glad that I'm not having to pay and buy and run updates each time on my computer, that it's always up to date on the latest, greatest stuff. And so we have this phrase we use, everything's auto magic, right? It's auto magic. It's almost like it works like magic in the background. But there's teams of engineers that are working their tails off to make this stuff happen, make it look perfect, get the best possible MVPs before we roll them out. But it really does, at the end of the day, it comes down to the atmosphere of the organization and the mission, I do believe, and giving the employees, giving engineers something that they have to buy in, right? No matter how much you pay them, if the job at the end of the day is not exciting and exhilarating, it's going to be hard to keep the talent around. So giving them the right tasks and finding the right people for the right jobs is also very important. Yeah, so I don't know. I hope that answers the question. I want to leave time for someone else too.
Great, thank you. And Laura, I want to touch on something that you said earlier. In light of the need to hire so many people, you mentioned that companies are starting to relax requirements for jobs, removing degree requirements, looking at related skills. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on whether that's something that more companies should be doing, and if you're seeing some real results in hiring better and faster by reducing or re-examining some of those requirements.
Sorry, videos.
Okay, we'll come back to Laura once she reconnects here. So Mandira, I'll throw it over to you. I know you work with a lot of companies trying to understand what their needs are, what jobs they're trying to fill. Can you tell us more about what you're hearing and how we can kind of create some better alignment with helping companies fill those roles, helping students and early career folks get into those roles, and what your thoughts are on connecting the dots there?
Yeah, so Brianna, one of the things that really stand out that we've heard a lot over and over from companies is that they want to hire students who have professional skills. And by that, I mean, problem solving, communication, teamwork. And how do you get those professional skills? By really working on hands-on real world projects, through mentoring, through internships, through job shadows, through apprenticeships. So what we would love to see is really having employers invest in those work-based learning programs, working with the CTCs, working with the education system here in Washington State to help build out those work-based learning opportunities for students, because that is what is really going to get the students ready equipped with those skills to be able to do these jobs. And I also want to mention that technology is changing at such a fast rate. Skills disruption has been so high for tech jobs that, the education systems are still catching up. I mean, it takes time. New skills come out like every day, but colleges can't change their programs that quickly. So these are some of the ways to really equip students with those skills. Another thing I want to mention is that I know that a lot of times students don't apply for jobs because they feel like they don't have the skills, because the job descriptions are so daunting. And even for entry-level roles, often they will ask for 2 to 3 years of experience. So we really need to work with employers to revise those job skills. And I think Laura was referring to that when she was speaking earlier, so that you're really, you're able to attract that entry-level talent. So those are some of the thoughts that I have, Brianna.
I'd like to throw
Wonderful.
something in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
please go ahead, Lance.
Yeah, and for those of you who are looking to build experience, I can tell you as AWS partner, if you approach, there's a website on AWS, so you can look at different partners. They're willing to, if you're willing to work, want to volunteer your efforts and skills and develop your skills, they will hire you. They will look at you and say, hey, if you're willing to learn how to be a software developer, they will definitely look into how they can utilize you in their business, because they're a small, medium business, just like any trying to grow their company, and any help they can get is what they need. And so that's another way you can help develop your skills, is by looking through the AWS partner website.
Yeah, can I chime in real quick too? I like the question you posed on us too, Brianna, about higher level education, and companies now starting to realize that perhaps, if you find a diamond in the rough and they're really good for the job and they're one of those skilled engineers, it's probably a good idea to hire them. I'm all for higher level education, and shout out to Bellevue College, because that's where I went, was BCC at the time. Terrific program for video production there. But really it's college is a must. You got to learn how to, you got to go through the ropes. You got to go and you got to be on a team. You got to be in a class. You got to learn, right? And plus, one of the things that I always used to say back in the day at BCC is it gave me that ability to connect me with organizations that otherwise I wouldn't have had the option. This is, 15, 16 years ago. Gosh, even longer than that. But otherwise, I mean, I would just be cold calling. And the education system gave me the ability to connect, a warm introduction, where I was actually able to get a really cool internship, where otherwise I probably wouldn't have been able to get that opportunity. But definitely starting with internships is the best way to go, whether it's a small company or a large company. I mean, when you're young and you're just out of college, there's a lot of time ahead. You have a lot of opportunities. You'll learn, and I think you'll be very surprised what you'll learn at a small business. Even though it's small, there are a lot of small businesses like myself, like our company, that acts like a big business. We might not have tens of thousands of employees, but quite frankly, if you were to ask our customers, they think we're larger than we really are, because we're professional. We have our act together. We understand who we are and who we're looking for and who the right fit customer and employee wise Acastus is. So I think it is really great that companies are really starting to understand. I wouldn't say lower the expectation, but understand that if you have a valid employee who's really, or a valid talent who's really good, apply for the job, whether or not you might not have the specific bachelor's or master's degree. If you have a skill set, usually you can bend someone's ear, because at the end of the day, no matter whether you're a huge company or a small company, we want talent.
Absolutely. And I think, as Mandira noted, we certainly are looking for employers to invest in those partnerships as well, so that we can create those internship opportunities, create those connections that you're talking about, Nathan, and so that the companies have that direct pipeline for the students that are going to fill their open jobs. And I think there's also a lot to be said for the value of investing in early career talent specifically. Even though you may not see the payoff for a few years, typically those are the folks that are going to stick with you. They're going to build their skills with you, and can be a real benefit to the business. Laura, did you have anything to add on now that you're kind of reconnected here?
Yeah, so a lot was already kind of covered. Part of it is exactly what was said in working with the companies and the hiring managers and making sure they understand what is in the workforce and what is realistic for an early career talent. I know this was mentioned, we should not be expecting 3 years of professional non-internship experience for an entry-level role. Will some people have that? Absolutely, especially if they maybe took some time off in between bachelor's and master's and so forth. But I know that's something we're really working on within AWS, is educating our hiring managers to understand what is realistic for an early career talent, not lowering the bar, as Nathan said, absolutely not, still raising the bar, but making sure they are understanding what's out there and that it's a competitive market as well. So if the managers are taking 2 weeks to review a resume, they're likely not going to have a chance with that talent, because there's a lot of other companies that really want that talent. So I think that is critical. And then from a kind of candidate student perspective, making sure they understand the job they're applying for and what those qualifications are. They don't need to hit all of them necessarily. They may have a very specialized set of skills, but say you are proficient in like one particular language, and prefer hands-on coding, applying for a solutions architect role may not be the best role for you. So knowing what that role is and knowing what your skill sets are. Oftentimes we will get LinkedIn messages and different messages. Hey, I'm applying for an internship. I'll take anything, any internship. And that doesn't really help us guide them or guide you into what role is the best fit for you. We don't necessarily know your backgrounds. And it's not bad to be interested in multiple things, but at least doing that research to understand what the roles are and what types of roles you might be interested is very important. Saying kind of you'll do any internship, you just want to kind of get your foot in the door, is not always the best case, because you could end up in an internship that you absolutely do not like or does not a match for your skill sets, and that's not good for or it's not ideal for the company or for you, because you're not going to be happy.
Thanks, Laura. So let's talk now about, We've mentioned that colleges and universities can be really good partners in this space in building out the future cloud workforce. So let's hear a little bit about what colleges are doing to prepare students with this skill set. So Liz, if I can go ahead and start with you, can you tell us a little bit about what Bellevue College is doing, and even kind of what is the student awareness or interest in these type of roles?
Sure. So we've been cloud, I want to say integrated, but we've been doing cloud in our division for a while. We do cloud services, cloud architecture, cloud infrastructure classes. We have certificates in it. And we're mostly using AWS with some Azure. We're trying to kind of teach them to be cloud agnostic, I suppose, because we don't want to really choose where they go. Because they might want to do Amazon, they want to do Microsoft, they might go we don't do Google Cloud. I don't believe it. They're aware of Google Cloud, but when students are coming in, they really don't know much about cloud. It's kind of a buzzword. We're starting to do better about that. So we're trying to educate them on the various cloud roles, the difference between a cloud analyst and a cloud admin and a cloud engineer. I will say most of our students might become cloud admins, because that's kind of more direct from like doing IT like on-prem to doing it in cloud. It's a little bit more of a direct pathway for them to get started. And then they'll kind of shift to being cloud engineers as they start doing more coding. That might be more of an interest for them, but we do try to like educate them on that pathway and provide them with various options in which they could learn it. We wish that we were more partnered with more organizations. We do work with AWS quite a bit. And we're trying to do more with Microsoft and other local organizations. But it's kind of been difficult, I suppose, because I think most folks don't necessarily think of us as the first place to go to kind of find a partner. They might go to the AWS partner who might go to someone else. And what's interesting about coming to community college, it's our student age group tends to be a little bit older than they might anticipate. So there might be, I think our average age might be 26. So it's people who are getting retraining oftentimes who might have already had a career and wanted to kind of come and do something else. We definitely have folks that are fresh out of college and running start students. So that's still part of our population, but you'll get more of a diverse range of students coming to the community college, which tends to be pretty great. And we're still trying to grow our cloud offerings. Like we're starting to get some BAS offerings as well, mostly in just understanding cloud services and business, and looking more into Salesforce and other areas too. So hopefully I broadly answered your question.
Yes, thank you. And Ava, I'd love to hear from you as well. I know you're up at Skagit Valley College, so the market probably looks a little different than it does in the Seattle Bellevue area. So would love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Sure, thanks, Brianna. So I would say that my experience in Skagit is fairly similar to what Liz described, but we have an associate program that is a workforce program. Certificates are embedded in the program, and we are partnered with both AWS and Microsoft MSLE. So the students have the opportunity to earn certificates as they also are getting through their associate degree. We have a variety of students, both running start and also older students who are retraining. And we do have partnerships with Computing for All, so thanks Mandira for being there for us, as well as other organizations such as TAG and W, and they provide job shadowing, mentorships, internship opportunities, and hopefully job placements as well. I'm seeing that students are not very clear on the cloud, so I think this was also something Liz mentioned. If you say, I want to study computer science, it's pretty much clear you're going to go to a computer science program. And with the cloud, the entry point and also the jobs are not very clear. So I think maybe both educational institutions and technology companies can do more outreach to explain and to present to the potential students what is available out there. Because of where we are located, we actually have a lot of smaller businesses who are not cloudified yet. So they're still using the traditional infrastructure, and that's something to note. As a faculty, one other challenge that we face is that we have to always stay ahead of the students. So there is a lot of preparation to prepare to teach those classes. But thanks for providing the materials. We have had great experience with AWS providing the curriculum. for training in actually Canvas learning management system. So it's a similar format as what we use in the college, which has been very helpful. I think that's all I can think of right now.
As a couple of folks have mentioned, it is a really big challenge for the higher education system to keep on top of technology trends because things move so quickly, as I think Mandira mentioned. The curriculum development process is very slow and long, and our faculty put in so much work to make sure that they're providing a really good foundation for students coming through the programs. For folks in industry or others who might be aware, are there things that you're seeing with entry-level candidates where there's kind of a widespread common shortfall, where there's a skill set that students and new professionals seem to be lacking across the board? For our education partners on the call today, we always want to be hearing about what companies are looking for and how we can better position our students for those opportunities. Are there any kind of trends that you've seen there, or does it really depend on the specific role and specific company?
I'll jump in. I think rather than saying shortfalls, I think we see a lot of, and this is great, a lot of ambition, where you have some new talent. You know, they've went through the school and perhaps did a boot camp. You know, you've got the pep talk that you can make this and that, doing the job, but it does take a little bit of time. You know, the company deserves a little bit of time to understand who you are as an engineer, and vice versa. But the main thing is just really understanding that you have to build that portfolio. You have to build that experience, because it does make you stronger. I remember back when I was doing video, I thought I was, you know, the best editor at the time. And then a couple of years later, I look back at my video projects and I'm like, oh, they're not that great. It's not as good as I thought they were, because you do get better and better and better. And so for younger engineers, I think the best thing you can do is surround yourself. Take that opportunity to surround yourself with more skilled engineers, and realize that and understand that, you know, the better people you can be surrounded with is the better it's going to make you. And then you'll really see just opportunities opening themselves. So not a shortfall, but just a lot of ambition, which is terrific. But definitely knowing that if you stick with it and you work hard and you're passionate about what you do, success will follow. It's almost a guarantee, because this is the world where it's computing, cloud-based technologies are here for a long time. Our company's totally invested into it. Amazon's invested into it. So that's a good sign right there. So these jobs are here to stay. And it does make me very happy to hear that the colleges, especially BC as well, have these programs for students, because, you know, this is definitely the future. And then one piece of advice I would give is to just create as many personal projects as you can. When you're looking for a job, when you're at your job, if you're starting your own business, just create as many personal projects as you can, because all that's just going to be ammunition for that next big opportunity, where we employers want to see projects that you've done, whether it's small or large, or yourself and your two buddies. We want to see as much work as possible. So I'll leave it at that.
Ava, go ahead.
One thing I forgot to mention, the Skagit Valley College is located in Mount Vernon, but the program is entirely online, so it's accessible to virtually any student who has an internet connection. And since Nathan brought up the projects, we do make an effort to have a capstone and team projects that the students can present, hopefully as their first piece to the potential recruiters. So we try to do this as well. Thanks.
Great. Yeah, let's build on that idea a little bit. Ava and Liz and Mandira as well. I'd love to hear more about what you're looking for in terms of partnerships with employers. How can companies engage with you and your students? What are the best ways for them to tap into your talent pool? And what are you really looking for? And how can we make some connections?
Such a great question, because, yeah. So what's interesting is that maybe people don't necessarily know is that just on average, colleges can be about 3 years behind what industry is doing. And it's not because we're not trying to be connected with what industry is doing, is that generally technology has been changing at such a rate that what they're doing in their research and what they're going to be announcing is generally 3 years ahead of what we'll eventually get to actually play with. So what would be really beneficial is for us to know some of those key things. It doesn't necessarily need to be the technology, but just having an inkling of, like, are we going into more automation, which we know we are? but I used to work in art and digital arts, and so finding that digital art was going to be going proceduralism was a really key thing that I needed to know, so that I could change curriculum and start doing more procedural art, because our students are going to need to do that to be employed. So what are those things coming in cloud that we need to know so that we can start training folks? Because like our cloud admin is going to go away because they're going to become cloud engineers, because that's what tends to happen is like cloud admins are kind of just the base level IT folks. And then they all become, then once they do their coding and become engineers, then where they have to backfill some more cloud admins, you would think, or is everyone just a cloud admin now? So we just sort of need to know what those parts are. And so how we get those partnerships, internships are great, but we really want to have people in our advisory committees, would be really awesome. So if anyone's interested in joining the Bellevue College advisory committees, definitely hit me up. Apprenticeships would also be really intriguing. And we're also investigating those more at a certificate and also at a bachelor's and associate's level. But just being able to continue to have conversation and connection, because always tends to be kind of a one-off conversation and then it falls away. So having a commitment to a college, or to, it doesn't necessarily have to be Bellevue, just having a commitment to being able to share this information is really what we need. Because otherwise we're not going to be educating the workforce in an effective way to get you the people that you need.
Absolutely. Mandira, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, so Brianna, I think for us, and I already kind of mentioned this, but really, we are working on ways to partner with employers to bring those work-based learning experiences to the students. And Liz touched on this as well, apprenticeships, internships, building in hands-on project work, within the coursework in the classes. So things like that, really getting employers to step up and help us with that. The other thing I also want to mention that I wanted to mention earlier is we hear a lot from employers who are looking for cloud, entry-level cloud roles. Cloud certifications are very important to them. So, they want to make sure that students are at a certain skill level once they've taken those cloud certification certificates, I guess, whether it's AWS or Microsoft or Google. But that's a way to really sort of standardize, and know that a student who's come from, XYZ college, as long as they have that certification, they know that they have this type of skill set. So yeah, so just what, building on what Liz said, really, building those relationships, have employers come into the classroom, talk to the students about what kind of skills they're looking for, and partner with us on how best to sort of train them. Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. So for the employers listening to the call today, the WTIA's Education Council can really be your conduit to any of these programs and more that you're hearing about. Our role is really to help foster these connections between employers that want to build their workforce and the training programs, the colleges, universities, nonprofits that are helping prepare candidates for those roles. So please feel free to reach out to the WTIA if you need help getting connected to your local college or to any of them across the state. Let's talk about a little bit of a shift to upskilling. As cloud has emerged as such an important sort of subset of IT and kind of the direction that things are moving in the future, I think a lot of people are transitioning from another type of IT role into a more cloud-focused role. Does anyone have any thoughts about upskilling current employees and kind of what that looks like in terms of your broader workforce development strategy?
Yeah, I can kind of go with that. I'll start off by saying there's not enough of that, at least in our company. There could be a lot more, and it's growing all the time, but still always room for opportunity and room for improvement there. So we have a bunch of different programs like Reskill, where we are taking even external, so not internal employees, but taking external that are career transitioning. Maybe they had a background in HR or some non-tech related field, and we are helping to kind of reskill them and get them into the workforce in a tech role. So we have programs like that. We have some programs. One of them is called Tech U, which is for those that have 0 to 2 years of relevant work experience. It could be military, career transitioning, professional, and so forth. And that's what that program is meant for. And they go through kind of cohort-based training. And that's become very popular. We don't have as many openings as we would like. I think this past year we had maybe 200, but we had about 6,000 applications. So we're trying to create more of those opportunities. That's for externals, but we do that internally as well. I think a lot of what we see though is those that are interested in transitioning maybe an IT support for Amazon, looking to go more into maybe a solutions architect role. They know that's where they want to go, but they have not worked on any projects or do not have any or some of those skill sets that would be really important for the solutions architect role. So reskilling is very important, but what is also important from a kind of candidate or student standpoint is making sure you know where you want to go, but also what it takes to get there, and you have projects, whether they're just personal stuff you've done in your free time that is relevant to where you want to go. We have seen a lot of IT support, especially wanting to get into maybe a solutions architect or an SDE type role, but they don't have that experience yet, and they haven't quite understood that that's kind of that next step and what you need to do to really be able to get into that position. So understanding that, it's great that you have that IT support and maybe some does correlate, but having additional experiences as well. So I think across the board, there's always more room for more reskilling and upskilling, both internally and externally. And we definitely hope to have more programs like that, or at least more openings in the current programs we do have.
Great. Liz, can you talk a little bit about some of the certificate options that Bellevue College and other colleges offer in this space?
I can't speak too much for other colleges. Ava might be able to speak to hers, and Mandira might know more because I know she's very connected in the CTC space. But I can speak to some of the certificates that we have. We also have our North Campus, which is our continuing education, is the place that we'll typically see people who want to do some reskilling. There's some organizations in the area will actually use them for training. So if you're an organization that wants to, upskill your employees, reaching out to our North Campus or our continuing education at Bellevue College would be a really great way to go about doing that. But we have certificates in cloud technicians, so people who are going to be doing essentially cloud admin type of work. That's generally where we tend to work. And we do find folks who will come in and get some just like a Python certificate or some other type of scripting certificate, like maybe in C# because they were wanting to kind of upskill to being a cloud engineer. So they just need to have the coding knowledge that they didn't necessarily have before, because like if you're doing cloud admin, you're mostly kind of like the IT sort of phase, but you're doing some more of the infrastructure or some architecture work maybe. So that's kind of where we're at. I don't know if Mandira and Ava want to add to that.
Ava, go ahead, and then I'll speak after you.
Sure, sounds good, thank you. So the way that we approach this at Skagit is that the certificates are going to be essentially mapped to the industry certificates. So in one of the classes, the students have the option to take AWS Cloud Practitioner. So this is a basic foundational level. In another basic foundational level class, they can take Azure Data Fundamentals and then earn the certificate as well. They have the option to take a certificate from Microsoft in security, cybersecurity, as well as in Power BI. And I'm trying to find a place for the, let's see, we have a big data. I don't think that Amazon has a certificate on big data, but we have a material. So I'm working around, I'm trying to figure out a place for this as well. So it might not be a certification, but a certificate, as you might know, there is a distinction between the two in big data from AWS. There may be some other ones as well. Our program is fairly new, so new options will be coming online as well. But we already went through those foundational level ones, and we give the students the option rather than make them take it, because they have to, for AWS, they get a discount, but they still have out-of-pocket costs. So they have the option to take it, but they are prepared to do so.
Great. So lots of opportunities out there for people who are just exploring this as a career and people who are transitioning from other careers and jobs as well. Liz mentioned this, but colleges, unfortunately, are always a little bit behind what industry is doing. We do our best, but there's always going to be that little bit of a gap there. It's also a challenge for colleges sometimes to identify when a new technology or trending topic is really going to stick around, or if it's just going to be a flash in the pan and in 6 months we'll have all moved on from that. Because colleges and our training partners are really trying to make sure that our students have a strong foundation for their careers. We're not building curriculum around something that's just here and then gone again. So Clance, since you work with companies that are transitioning, migrating to cloud, love to hear your take on whether you think it's here to stay. I'm going to take a guess on what you're going to answer, but would love to hear sort of what you're thinking about sort of future job outlook, future opportunities in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the tech space is definitely changing. My background's been in automotive, and that space itself is changing, where you have EVs, autonomous vehicles, flying vehicles are coming out. And the tech space is definitely where AWS is the primary use case for a lot of these companies. And so tech is not going anywhere for a long time, and especially getting into cloud computing. For everyone that's on this webinar that's interested in this industry, you are lucky, because this is going to be one of the most lucrative industries out there compared to joining a car dealership or working at an insurance company. You're going to be on the forefront of innovation, and being a part of that, it's a blessing. It's really cool. You guys are in a great spot.
Hey, Brianna, can I just add a couple of things? One of the quotes that we got actually from Dan McFedridge over at Amazon is that only 10% of the companies have cloudified their data and their services, which means that there are 90% that still have to, do that work. So you can just imagine the demand, and this is worldwide, the demand for cloud jobs is just going to be exploding. And another statistic that I read was the cloud skills gap is growing 44% year over year. And I just wanted to add to the earlier question is that Computing for All, we are working with 7 CTCs in the state, which include Bellevue College, Skagit, Bates, Columbia Basin, Cascadia, Whatcom, and one more, to cloudify their curriculum and help the students find internships in cloud jobs. And I can tell you that, it's not just like we've already talked about. It's just not something you can do in 1 year. It has taken some of the colleges a couple of years, this, Brianna, to do this work. So it's happening in phases, and students are learning the most basic, the cloud foundations. They'll pass that certificate, and then they'll either move on to the developing or the architecting or the sysops. But it takes time, and this is a multi-year project. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and I would like to add on to that. I mean, I'd say that whichever role that you choose initially as an entry level, this is not going to be your final role. You're going to be learning and adapting new skills and be led to different paths because, AWS, GCP, Cloud, Google, and Azure, there's so many different outlets that you can go through that you're like, wow, I really like databases, or I really like being in sales or a solutions architect. You have that lateral move. You can definitely change your interests and passion if you like it. So that's the beautiful thing about this industry, is that there's a lot of advancements and lots of ways to go.
I've got another question for the education folks on the panel. We've talked a lot about partnerships and how that really is a win-win. Do any of you have examples of good partnerships that you can share, where a college or a training provider has worked with an industry partner really to great impact? And the reason I'm asking is because we have both educators and employers listening in on the call today. And I think some folks just don't necessarily know where to start with partnerships. So do you have any good examples that you can share that others might be able to build upon?
I guess I can start. So we have a great partnership with Computing for All and another company that is local to the Skagit and Whatcom area, not company, rather nonprofit, TAG NW. And for our first cohort, when we had the community education where students were working on their capstone project, It was their first one, and we were able to arrange for, there was teamwork for mentors who are, one of them was actually from Microsoft Azure and some other folks from the area. So they would sit in and provide feedback weekly to the teams as they were working through their projects. And I think this was very valuable because sometimes, as you know, when you're new, you don't even know the right questions to ask. So I think this went very well. And then for the second round, for the second year project, we're hoping to actually do internships and make it even more connected in this way to the next level, which would be, of course, job placements.
There hasn't been a ton in cloud, as I could say on our end. But mostly capstone, as Ava was sort of mentioning, that's generally been kind of the foot in the door for some organizations to kind of come work with us. We've had some VR organizations come and get some VR projects, and some health providers as well who wanted some special projects. So we, our application development folks actually went and made like a model heart in VR. It was kind of interesting. That's generally been some successful partnerships, and we've had them year over year too. They just kind of keep coming back because they've enjoyed the work that our students have gotten or done for them, and they've hired a good number of our students as well, as it kind of gets them to sort of see the sort of skills that our students have, and they're just, they're finding that person that Nathan's sort of been talking about that's got that. I want to say juice, but just has the skills that they need. So those are the main ones that came to mind. I had another and it just escaped my head, unfortunately. It'll come back to me.
Brianna, I can add, for Computing for All's pre-apprenticeship program, the way we approach employer engagement, we've got a low touch to a high touch model. So we start with a low touch commitment where we ask an employee just to come in to be a speaker or a mentor. And then once they start interacting with the classroom, and like Liz mentioned, they start seeing the kids, they want to become champions for them, and they want to take their engagement to the next level. And, they've given us hands-on projects, and they'll come in as, weekly mentors. And then that has resulted in many internships as well, over like a year or two. So it's just building that relationship. Like Liz said, getting them to come and sit on your advisory board, staying in touch, so it's sort of like whatever you can commit to, start with that, and then kind of let's see, where that scales to. But I definitely want to do more in cloud. I think we need to do hackathons. We need to do cloud days for students. So there's just so much we need to market to students. I feel like there's a whole lack of marketing. Students don't know what are the different roles. What am I going to get by doing this degree? So I know we alluded to that a little bit. So there's still so much more that we need to do.
I remembered my other one. We have an experiential learning course, or it's essentially a program that's for an internship where a faculty member and an industry or a company will work together on kind of supporting the student through the process. It's kind of an apprenticeship-ish, but that's been very successful. So we've had numerous students who've gone through that process, who have taken experiential learning class. It would be 1 or 2, depends on how long the internship is. So if it's 3 months, it'd be 1 class. If it's 6 months, it'd be 2 classes. And a lot of students get hired at the end of that because the student got great experience and they got to work with a faculty mentor to get some additional support, and also the organization ended up getting a great person.
I just had one small bit to add. The word technical advisory committee, or the phrase, was mentioned a couple of times, and I want to highlight the importance of having a good, reliable technical advisory committee, because this is the feedback to the colleges that is more up to date as far as what is currently in demand. So I think that's a very important piece. And I think all educational institutions invite as many committee members as possible.
Great, thanks, Ava. Nathan, go ahead.
I was going to say, I can't really speak too much to the partnerships. I would love to be able to tout our future partnerships with organizations like where Ava's from, and obviously continue relationships with Bellevue College. So we're definitely looking for more relationships where we can work with these educations and get the right fit for the job. Just a short little message that I wanted to present is something that it's really good to install in any new engineer or any experienced engineer. And I've taken from me, I've learned the hard way, is teaching them a proper testing environment. This is especially true for cloud computing, because with cloud, you're paying for the IO, the bandwidth. So that's linked to the credit card or your account. So any mistakes, you literally will pay for. And so having the right testing environment that you can test the code before deploy, before it goes out for MVP, is so vital and so important. And then the other thing I want to leave you with is just, rebuilds happen, and that's good for growth. That's good for learning. That's good for the organization, and that's good for job security at the end of the day. We've done many rebuilds. It's not a bad thing. It's just what happens as you learn, you get larger, the code builds more, you get more people onto your team. At some point, you're going to have to go back to the drawing board, because as tech changes, you're going to have to not just massage the code, but you're going to have to eventually probably rebuilding it. And doing that behind the scenes can be costly and take time. So it's really important that you have a true scope. And that's important to learn early on is what your scope is. And then something that I had to learn too as an employer is not to throw more at the scope because you can overwhelm your team. But at the same time, as a team member, you have to be agile. You have to understand that changes and issues and things do come up. And trust us, from the employer standpoint, we don't want to have to change things or get that last minute, we need this in order to go launch. But you just got to be flexible at some times. So that's just kind of a message I wanted to put out there.
Thanks so much, Nathan. We're getting close to time here, so we'll go ahead and wrap things up. But this has been a really exciting conversation. Thank you so much to all of the panelists for joining us. I think it's pretty clear that the amount of need and opportunity in this space feels pretty unlimited. For the employers in the room, it seems like there's an opportunity to examine your job descriptions, your hiring practices, and think about how can we bring more people on board, get them the skills they need, put them in the right positions, and really build out our workforce. I think what this really comes down to is investing in partnership. This is a long-term strategy, but it's worth it for both sides, I think. If you want to build out a really strong cloud workforce or a workforce in any technical area, investing in these partnerships with training partners and colleges is a way to do that. That is going to be sustainable as you grow and build your company. So thanks again to everyone for joining us today. I will hand it back to Joshua now for any closing thoughts that he has. And thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. What a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, both panelists and attendees. Thank you so much, Brianna, for stepping up and taking on the job of emceeing the event today. And thank you so much to AWS for making this conversation possible. I hope you all have a wonderful day. If you have any questions, follow-ups, or anything you'd like to touch base with about this event, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I put my contact information in the chat box. And that's it. Thank you so much and take care.